So lovely to see you all again. I can see that we've still got people joining us, but let's get going. And is this the agenda we've got in front of us on the screen, in terms of we've got a report out from the Perfect Ward, is that right? And then I can't wait to do a Lean for Leaders certification. Are those the two agenda items?
They are, yeah. We've got the Perfect Ward link board up first and then the certificates afterwards. We've also got a Slido account now using the hashtag LIM. So if anybody wants to put in a comment or a question whilst people are reporting out, you can do that there or in the chat function as well.
Brilliant. Okay, and I'm guessing over time we might use LIM then to do a bit of engagement with the group, to ask them some specific questions. But for today, it's to be able to capture people's comments, is it?
Yep, hopefully we'll have some polls and other things in time, but yeah, if they can use it for questions today.
Brilliant. Okay, lovely. Thanks, Tasha. So I can't wait then. Let's hand over to Amy and to Helen to hear all about the Perfect Ward.
So my name's Amy Dennis. I'm a Senior Project AHP in the Professional Practice Standards and Safety team, and I'll just hand you over to Helen so she can introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Helen Hisco. I'm the Project Administrator in the Professional Practice Standards and Safety team, and I've worked alongside Amy supporting the Perfect Ward Link Board project.
Thank you. So just to give you a bit of background to this project, in September 2019, the Perfect Ward dashboard was launched, which enabled key metrics and indicators to be displayed in one place, and it could be seen at trust, CSU and ward level. In conjunction with this, the Perfect Ward meetings were launched, which were to be held monthly and attended by the heads of nursing, matrons and the ward managers for each clinical area within their CSU. Next slide, please. So moving on from this, it was evident that there was wide variation within and across CSUs regarding how they used metrics and indicators for improvement, and our chief nurse proposed using a board in clinical areas to improve standardisation across the trust. So to ensure we developed a board that fitted the brief, we considered the following three challenges, which are on the screen. So first thing was, how do we empower all staff within clinical teams to know and own data about their clinical areas and use this to identify areas for improvement as well as celebrate success? And then if we were able to achieve that, could we use it as a tool for staff to get involved in improvement? The second challenge was, how do we enhance shared learning within and across teams? And then the last thing was, how do we enable clinical teams to communicate local CSU and trust level patient safety and quality indicators? So those were sort of the challenges that we wanted to try and address. Next slide, please. So the key actions, the first stage was to design the Perfect Ward link board, bearing in mind the challenges that we'd identified. So the key components and things we considered for this was, we aimed to align it with Leeds improvement method, specifically using some of the key components of a people link board so that it underpinned the ethos of Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust. We wanted to ensure that the board contained CSU, trust and ward level data and information such as the Perfect Ward meeting minutes, which are displayed on the board, as you can see, the Perfect Ward brief, which highlights trust level data, and the nursing and midwifery strategy in the top left hand corner, as well as the CSU top 3 risks. We also wanted to make sure that the board had a logical layout with a flow for the users, so it was user friendly, to increase the likelihood that the board would be used, and also to empower all staff to be involved. If it was sort of quite logical and straightforward, we felt that would increase the chance of people using it and finding it helpful. And then we also had to carefully consider the size of the board, bearing in mind sort of what might be feasible in clinical areas. So those were sort of key things that we wanted to think about. And I'm just going to hand over to Helen, because she's going to take us through the next 2 slides. So next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So following on from the design of the board, when that was agreed, we implemented the PDSA model, so the Plan, Do, Study, Act model, in terms of putting together a pilot for this project. So the planning stage was very much some standard components of a normal project plan. So we had a project statement, we put a project plan together, and we did some pilot planning. We engaged with ward leads in order to implement the Perfect Ward Link Board on the pilot wards. We talked about expectation setting and what support we'd be able to give. In terms of the pilot wards, we took a selection across a number of different CSUs, and there was a ward from cardiorespiratory. Cardiorespiratory as a CSU were really keen to be involved fully. So at the pilot stage, we did incorporate that full CSU, although we were aware that we wouldn't allow any more scope creep to come in at that point, because otherwise it would make the pilot too big. So after that, we did an initial visit onto the wards, and we actually had a board mocked up in real time and real size, and we took that with us to the ward so that they could actually see it in real life. Provided a detailed explanation of that. Following on from that, we made a second visit, and we started to talk about what sort of feedback they had from the board. Did they need any more support from us in terms of getting the board up and running and their regular meetings up and running? We did then start to talk a little bit about engaging champions, but that very much came at a later date. Next slide, please. Following on from the learning from the pilot wards, we did come back and then look at our full rollout plan. And as part of that, we set out a clear aim around what we wanted to do, what timescales were involved, how we were going to deliver that. And we planned our rollout based on that plan. And we planned it particularly based around CSU. So we delivered to CSUs as a group. That worked really well for us in terms of the CSU, because it enabled us to talk about cross-ward support, sharing best practice across their CSUs. So the presentation was at the Perfect Ward Link Board meeting, and at that meeting we gave all of the wards a starter pack. So we called it a board in a bag. So we gave them the templates, the paperwork, everything that they needed to get up and running, we gave them at that point. And then we talked a little bit more about champions, about how it would be good to use champions and ensure that everybody was heard and was involved and could get as much involvement into the board that they wanted to do. And then we started to talk a little bit about how we were going to sustain that, and that was through the Perfect Ward meetings. So our expectation was that that would become a regular agenda item on the Perfect Ward meetings. But certainly from the pilot and from the involvement that we've had with the wards, what we've found is that they're really keen to talk about the progress they've made. The wards are keen to share their success. So I don't think there'll be any problem with them highlighting that at their Perfect Ward meetings. I think that's my couple of slides. Over to you, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is where we're up to so far. So we're still working on this project. So we've launched across 6 CSUs, which is 51 wards so far. 28 wards of these have their board in situ, and 14 of those are having regular meetings to discuss the data on the Perfect Ward Link Board, which we're really pleased with. We feel we're making some really good progress despite some difficult circumstances. Next slide, please. So this is just some examples of how the different areas have developed their boards, which I think you'll be able to see just how brilliantly varied they are. So we've kept the standardisation. They've all got the standard items on, but they've all made it their own, and they've been given freedom to do that, which has really helped with engagement. And that's sort of been brilliant to see really how they've made it sort of quite personal to their team by putting different, sort of coloured items on and different wording and bits and pieces, but mostly the standardisation is still there. So it's just to get an example of how they've done their board. Next slide, please. And then there's just some comments here, some of the feedback we received. I won't go through all of them, but just in terms of some of the comments that people have made in the clinical areas about the board. So it clearly showcases our success, central point to show the staff and communicate. There was some feedback about it could be quite daunting for some staff because some of the information is quite unfamiliar initially, but that's sort of the idea, to start getting people a bit more familiar and feeling less daunted by the data. had a lot of people ask, can we be included? A lot of people have wanted their own boards when we haven't quite got to that launching in their area yet. Some have said about sort of lack of space for the board has been a bit of a challenge, but they've particularly enjoyed celebrating success and have felt that's been a really good morale boost for staff. So a good mix of comments, but mostly some really good feedback about the board. Next slide, please. So just in summary of what we feel's gone well so far in the project, we think that we've been what's been really positive, actually, which I've been really impressed with, is the attitude and enthusiasm from ward teams. So the engagement from the staff has been amazing, and that's been despite extremely difficult circumstances during the time of implementation. And I just want to take the opportunity to really thank all of the teams we've been involved with so far for all of their efforts and all of their sort of positivity really regarding it. So that's been fantastic. The next thing really is the celebrating success, giving people the opportunity to visibly celebrate success and also choose what they wanted to celebrate. Staff have really liked this component of the board, and has given an opportunity as well to share the successes at Perfect Ward meetings, which has been great. Stakeholder management. This has been really tricky because there's obviously been a lot of stakeholders. It's a big project, lots of stakeholders that are sort of involved, but we do feel we've managed this pretty well. Aligning different priorities is always quite tricky, but we feel the main ways we've achieved that is through regular communication. And sort of asking for feedback, active listening to what people's concerns were, and doing what we said we would. So if we said we'd go back, if we said we'd contact them, if we said we'd get a new pack out to them, whatever it is, trying to sort of adhere to that. And I think that's been a success. And I just also want to take the opportunity to just sort of say, given the amount of stakeholders, just the amount of support we've had. Obviously, Helen and I have led this project, but we've had loads of support behind the scenes. We've had the rest of our team, professional practice team, that have supported us and given us advice. And we've had support from the KPO team, and we've had obviously the support from the ward teams and the heads of nursing matrons. So just a huge thank you to everybody else that's been involved in this project.
Can I just come in there, Amy, as well, and talk about ownership and visibility? From my point of view, that went really well as well. The board, the layout of the board was easy to use, and people clearly understood what was expected of them. So that went really well. And the project plan, I think the fact that we had a very clearly defined project plan, we had a very clear aim, and we tracked what we were doing, and we benchmarked ourselves consistently, went back and checked where we were up to in the plan. That worked really well. Even so much as we had a couple of meetings a week where it might only be 10 minutes or even less sometimes, but that allowed us to be really agile and responsive when we needed to be. So I think that went really well as well.
Thanks, Helen. Okay, next slide, please. So what would we do differently? So the first thing is be clear on the brief. So with such a big sort of project and large scale project, what I'd do differently would be really clear on what the brief is from the sort of outset. So the project owner or sponsor, whoever's sort of overseeing that, and being clear on kind of what that direction is. So what's negotiable about the project, what's non-negotiable, so that can help sort of with the vision of where you're heading. And then the next thing is the project plan and being realistic. So I think me and Helen ambitiously were trying to sort of move things forward, but we perhaps didn't account, I certainly didn't, for perhaps quite sort of the scale of it, and the fact that there was just us able to sort of help support implement, which we maybe were a bit ambitious about what we could achieve. So that would be something to just reflect on and learn for future projects.
And I agree, Amy, and I think particularly from my point of view, I think, because I'm not from a clinical background at all, I think I didn't fully appreciate the pressures and the complexity that my clinical colleagues were under. Whilst I appreciate they've got a very challenging job, and particularly at this time they were under significant challenges. I don't think I fully appreciated that, but now, having worked much more closely with them and kind of walked a little bit in their shoes, a very small bit in their shoes, I certainly have a greater appreciation of what they're facing on a day-to-day basis. So that was really enlightening for me.
That's it. That's the end
yeah.
of our presentation. Thank you all for
That's
listening.
absolutely amazing. Oh, board in a bag, ladies. That's I love it. That's absolutely brilliant. So, whilst we've got you on the call, should we open it up to some questions, comments, observations before we then go on to do our congratulations for Sarah? So, colleagues on the call, Lisa, you got your hand up.
Hi. Oh, wow. Honestly, I'm sending you a virtual hug. If we didn't have COVID, I'd be in there right now giving you a hug, because that was brilliant. And honestly, you know, I do appreciate, you know, how difficult, and you've persevered with it. You know, I'm really pleased with the work you've done. So thank you so much. And for me, really, the perfect ward was about staff being able to understand how they're doing it very simply and not making it difficult for them. So I think going forward, the next part of this for me will, you know, when I go on the wards, I always say, have you got a perfect ward link board? To come and show me what it's like. And I've seen some of the examples like you've demonstrated there. They're brilliant. They've taught me through it. And I was saying to some of the CSWs on the ward this week, actually, that's great. And what my next point in the journey will be, I'm going to come to you one day and you're going to just talk to me about what's on there, as in anybody who steps in your clinical environment, if they ask you how your ward is doing, all you need to do is to take them to this board. And, you know, certainly thinking about anyone in the organisation who wants to see how we're performing, but especially those lovely regulators who sometimes nip in and have, if anyone can take them to this is a brilliant example of having real grip and oversight. And thank you to Cardiorespiratory as well for the work. I know Sarah's on the call for supporting that initially. So yeah, thumbs up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amazing. And Sarah, did you want to come in? It sounds as if you were not happy to be one pilot ward.
No, I just wanted to thank Amy and Helen for enabling the full CSU to embark on the pilot, really, because granted, I know that was a big ask of them. And I think, as Lisa said, it's for me as a head of nursing, it's that golden thread of communication, and from having our perfect ward meetings with the senior sisters to have that visibility in the clinical areas, that what are the top 3 priorities for the CSU this month that we are actually going to be working on collectively. You know, what are the themes across the organisation, and what are your teams saying, what are you proud of? And granted, we've got some work to do around embedding those weekly huddles around the board, but as a concept, and the teams really truly embraced it, and it's just another way to demonstrate, like Lisa said, how we are performing in our clinical areas, where we need to improve, and what are we doing that's great for patients. So thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Thanks,
Absolutely brilliant. I've got a couple of questions, but before I pile in, is there anybody else that would like to ask questions or offer observations and comments? Tony?
Yeah, as outside eyes, just looking in, and distant outside eyes, because I haven't been in touch physically with any of you since March. It's really great to see this sort of initiative going forward. It really is good. I think it's to be congratulated. I'd love to see the PDSA cycles and the way in which you'd operated those and taken your learning forward. I thought that was great. And also, I mean, I can, just looking into the future, you know, the work that you're doing is going to be fantastic when we can start to spread that knowledge across the trust between CSUs using digitisation. I think it'd be great.
Thank you, that's great.
Brilliant. Any other questions from those on report out? Can I be cheeky then and ask a couple? So how often do you refresh the data?
So that is a bit down to the clinical area, and it depends a little bit on what they're working on. So the Perfect Ward brief and the dashboard data is monthly, and the minutes, because obviously those are all monthly changes. But in terms of what their focus and action is, it depends how big a task it is, because for example, if they're going to work on reducing pressure ulcers, for example, that may stay up for a longer period of time than if, for example, they're going to make quite a small, sort of a quick win change. So it does depend. That right hand side of the board is a little bit more flexible and depends on what they need, really.
Fabulous. And that's why there's this lovely balance of giving people a framework within which to work, but then them being able to personalize it in a way that works for them. I think that's absolute magic. I think that's absolutely brilliant. We've got a couple of other hands up. So if I bring in Liz and then Helen.
Hi, this is Liz from Pharmacy here. I'm so impressed with your work. It's just amazing. I'm going to come and pick your brains. But my question is, sometimes when we're trying to get people to focus on just 3 things to consider, there's a sort of like that huge array of items to choose from. Do you have any tips of what you did or what came across as to how you got people to choose the 3 things that they were going to look at?
I think what I've found when I've been out to visit areas is that I think what we've found is actually most areas know what they want or need to be working on. They're pretty on it actually with what they feel they need to focus on. We've definitely had the case where people have put down too many things, and I've gone to the board and there's been 5 or 6 things listed on their action, their sort of focus, and I've sort of suggested that maybe sort of doing 1 or 2, and again it depends on the size of it as to kind of, because I think if there's too many things then it can be quite demoralizing for staff, because you think we're not getting anything achieved. So but mostly they're quite good at picking what they feel. They sort of know what they need to work on. Obviously priorities shift and change, and it's about sort of perhaps where they're going to make the biggest impact to improving patient care, safety, and it might be that that's where they're needing to focus to start with. But yeah, it isn't easy though. I agree.
Thank you.
And Helen, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just really quickly, thanks, Jenny. Just my congratulations to Amy and to Helen. We've had lots of conversations over the last few months, and I am still blown away by 51 wards during a pandemic, which is an immense achievement. I think you've already alluded, Jenny, to the point I was going to make, but really about standard work. And when people hear the word standard, they automatically think that they don't want that standard because it doesn't apply to them. And I think what Amy and Helen have been able to do is to say, actually, you can really maintain a standard way of doing things, but adapt it to your local area. And I think one of the key things we've talked about is, how useful that will be for staff that work across different units, so that they can go to a different board. The concept is familiar and they will be able to understand what's going on in that particular area, which is going to be so helpful for our staff as we go through the winter. So well done, keep going. I can't wait to see this progress, and you need to come back to report out to tell us about updates. So I know we said it might be just 1 report out, but I think given the job you've done today, I think you will need to come back at some point to share the onward journey, so that we can see how your progression is going.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Lovely. Well said, Helen. And I guess I'm going to leave that summary there, because I think that's a delightful summary. Thank you. So then, Sarah, a huge congratulations. Which one have you been doing? Lean for Leaders, ALT? What have you? What's
no, standard Lean for Leaders, Jenny.
Have you? Wow, you didn't mention that to me when I saw you this morning. That's brilliant. Excellent. And when did you graduate?
it's been a little bit protracted, I'll be honest with you. The last module took me a little bit longer than I wanted it to. So Jimmy emailed me last week to say that I have now completed all of my workbooks. So yes, I'm thrilled.
That's amazing. And it's been lovely. So ever since I've joined, you've always, I think you were in the first report out that I ever came to, and you're in so many of the report outs, Sarah. So although it might feel protracted in terms of the certification and the formal learning, for somebody that has clearly been embedding all of these things in practice, you've been in so many RPIWs, you've been talking to adopting so many of the tools and techniques. It really, you know, for me, you're a real role model and advocate of converting that learning into practice, which is what it's all about, isn't it? Which is amazing. So huge congratulations. I can't give you anything.
That's fine.
I can't give you a big hug either.
No, it's fine. I've been really lucky. I was able to go to Seattle with the trust probably 2 years ago, 18 months ago, I can't remember now. It's always been my ambition to go to the institute and be taught there. And I was able to go and do the Managing the Flow work stream, so a week in Seattle. So yeah, that was a huge privilege, a bit of a bucket list tick for me. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to using all the tools and techniques that I've gathered, and working with my colleagues in cardiorespiratory now, who are also on a journey along the Leeds improvement method, and developing that approach much more across the nursing workforce. So yeah, so thanks. It's
brilliant. And any tips, because I'm just about to try and finish my module 3. Any tips? Any tips?
Keep on smiling and keep on going. Don't leave your last homework. That's always the one that everybody. If you finish the study days and then you breathe. So yeah, just at the end of the day, we're all doing it day to day. We're all doing it, and it's just giving yourself the time to write down what you're doing. It's not as onerous as people make out.
Yeah, no, I find it's more the thinking, and then when I come to do it, I do it much more easily and much more quickly. It's the fact that it's sitting there waiting to be done. So I think that is a really good reflection. Brilliant. Well, congratulations.
Thank
you.
You.
Really well done.
Thank you.
Team, how do we get a certificate to Sarah? How does all of that work now virtually?
I've been sent an electronic one.
Have you? Right.
Yeah.
There's a hard
Good.
copy on its way to you too, Sarah.
Internal post for you, Sarah, so you can display it proudly.
Great. Good. Well, maybe if I'm popping over to the LGI again next week, I might be, if you're in, I'll come and have a look. Great. Well done. Huge congratulations. I'm just conscious of time because we're going to start losing people. So report out again next Friday, same time, 12:30, and look forward to seeing you all then. Take care and have a good weekend for those of you that aren't working, and for those of you that are, I hope it's not too heavy. Bye for now.